The morning sun filtered through the autumn leaves as Tom walked along the edge of his land. The property had been his home for over 20 years, 15 acres of peaceful countryside with a beautiful stream cutting through it. Every Sunday, morning, rain or shine, he'd make this walk. It was his way of checking on things, staying connected to the land his grandfather had first purchased back in the 1950s. The stream marked the boundary between his property and the new fancy neighborhood, called Oak Ridge Estates. Where once stood old-growth forest now sat rows of matching houses with perfect lawns. Tom didn't mind the development too much. People needed places to live, but he treasured the natural buffer the stream provided between his simple farmhouse and the rows of cookie-cutter homes. Something caught his eye, a flash of bright orange that didn't belong among the browns and greens of the forest floor. Tom stopped, squinting against the morning sun. "What in the world?" he muttered, stepping closer to the stream bank. Wooden stakes topped with bright orange ribbons formed, a line across his property starting at the stream's edge and continuing into the trees. Tom frowned, his weathered face creasing with concern. He hadn't put those there, and nobody had asked permission to mark up his land. Following the mysterious stakes, Tom pushed through a thicket of blackberry bushes, his old work boots crunching on fallen leaves. The sound of voices grew louder as he approached the stream. On the other side of a large oak tree, he found 3 men in hard hats huddled over equipment, measuring tapes stretched across his land. "Morning," Tom called out, keeping his voice friendly despite the unease growing in his stomach. "Mind telling me what you fellas are doing on my property?" The workers looked up, startled. The oldest of them, a gray-haired man with a clipboard, recovered first. "Just taking some measurements for the new bridge," he said casually as if discussing the weather. "Bridge?" Tom repeated. "What bridge?" "The footbridge," said another worker, a younger man who pointed to a rolled-up set of blueprints. "Oak Ridge. Estates HOA approved it last month. It'll connect the subdivision to those hiking trails on the other side of your property. Save everyone a 5-mile drive around." Tom felt his face grow warm. "Nobody's mentioned any bridge to me. This is private property." The workers exchanged glances. The older one shrugged. "We're just doing what we're told, sir." "You'll need to take it up with the HOA." Tom stood there speechless as they continued working, measuring and marking as if he wasn't even there. His land, his stream, his trees, and these strangers were planning to build a bridge straight through without so much as a phone call. Back at his house, Tom's hands shook slightly as he dialed the number listed on the Oak Ridge Estates website. After being transferred twice, he finally reached Linda Parker, the HOA president. "Oh, Mr. Miller," she said when he explained who he was. Her voice had that syrupy sweet tone people use when they're about to tell you something you won't like. "Yes, the community bridge project, it's very exciting." "Nobody asked my permission," Tom said, trying to keep his voice steady. "That's my land you're planning to build on." "Well, actually," Linda replied, her tone cooling several degrees. "According to our legal team, there's an existing easement that grants right-of-way across that section of your property. It dates back to the original county planning documents." "That's not possible," Tom said. "I've owned this land free and clear for 20 years. There's no easement." Linda's laugh tinkled through the phone like ice in a glass. "Mr. Miller, I have the documents right in front of me. Perhaps you should check your paperwork again. The easement clearly allows for public access to the nature preserve. Our bridge will simply make that access more convenient." "I want to see these documents," Tom insisted. "Of course," Linda replied smoothly. "I'll have our attorney send you copies. But I should warn you that the project has already been approved by the county. Construction begins next month." After hanging up, Tom sat at his kitchen table, staring out the window at the land his family had treasured for generations. The stream, where he'd taught his daughter to fish. The big oak where they'd built a treehouse one summer. And now some group of strangers thought they could just take a piece of it because it was convenient for them. Tom pulled the old metal filing cabinet open and took out the thick folder containing his property deed and survey maps. He spread them across the table, carefully examining every page. He knew there was no easement. When he'd bought the place from his uncle, they'd done a complete title search. "Clean and clear," the lawyer had said. As the afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen window, Tom carefully read every word of every document. Nothing about easements or rights of way. Nothing about public access to the nature preserve, which sat a good quarter-mile beyond his property line anyway. The next morning, a thick envelope arrived from Westfield Bennett and Associates, attorneys at law. Inside was a cover letter and several photocopied pages, one showing a crudely drawn line across what was supposedly his property, with the words, "Public Access Easement," scrawled beside it. The document looked oddly new for something supposedly decades old. Tom called his old friend Jack, who'd retired from the county recorder's office the previous year. "They're trying to pull a fast one on you," Jack said after Tom explained the situation. "Sounds like they're counting on you not having the money or energy to fight them. These big HOAs, they've got lawyers on retainer and homeowners paying hundreds each month into their war chest." "So what do I do?" Tom asked. "You stand your ground," Jack said firmly. "They're betting a regular guy like you will just roll over. Don't give them the satisfaction." That evening, Tom stood by the stream again, watching the sunset turn the water golden. A family of ducks paddled peacefully near the bank. On the other side, he could see the back patios of the Oak Ridge estate homes, hear the faint sounds of their outdoor speakers and children playing. They thought he would just give up, that he couldn't fight their lawyers and their money and their fancy blueprint drawings. Linda Parker and her HOA board probably saw him as just some old guy with a rundown farm who wouldn't know how to stand up for himself. Tom smiled slightly as he turned back toward his house. If that's what they thought, they were in for quite a surprise. He wasn't just some pushover they could bully. This was his land, his legacy, and he'd fight for every inch of it. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Tom wasted no time. The morning after receiving those suspicious documents, he called his old high school buddy Mike Thompson, now a well-respected lawyer who handled property disputes. Tom hadn't talked to Mike in years, but some friendships never fade. "Tom Miller, how long has it been?" Mike's voice boomed through the phone. "Don't tell me you finally got in trouble with the law." "Not exactly," Tom replied and explained his situation. Mike's jovial tone disappeared. "Bring everything you've got to my office tomorrow morning. Every paper, every deed, everything with your name on it. And Tom, don't talk to that HOA again, without me present." The next day, Tom sat in Mike's cluttered office watching his friend carefully examine each document. The wall clock ticked loudly as Mike compared Tom's original property deed with the photocopied easement the HOA had sent. "This is garbage," Mike finally said, tossing the HOA's documents aside. "The paper's too new, the signature doesn't match the county recorder's stamp from that era, and they've used a legal description format that wasn't even standard until the 1970s. This is a fake, plain and simple." Relief washed over Tom. "So I can tell them to get lost?" Mike leaned back in his chair. "It's not that simple. These people have resources, Tom. They've already invested in site plans and hired workers. They won't back down easily." He drummed his fingers on the desk. "We need to file for an emergency injunction first thing tomorrow. Stop any construction before it starts." 3 days later, Tom and Mike stood before Judge Wilson, a stern-faced woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. On the other side of the courtroom sat Linda Parker with 2 slick-looking lawyers from a big city firm. One of them kept checking his watch, as if this whole thing was a waste of his valuable time. "Your Honor," Mike said, "my client has owned this property for over 20 years with no easement ever recorded. The supposed document the Oak Ridge Estates HOA presented appears to be fabricated." The HOA's lawyer stood up, straightening his expensive tie. "Your Honor, these are serious allegations. The easement in question has been part of county records since before Mr. Miller purchased the property. If he failed to do his due diligence at the time of purchase, that's hardly our client's concern." Judge Wilson frowned. "I'm granting a temporary injunction halting any construction until this matter can be properly investigated. Both parties will submit their evidence for authentication by court-appointed experts." Outside the courtroom, Linda brushed past Tom. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she hissed. "We will build that bridge." Tom felt a chill despite the warm spring day. Linda's words weren't just angry, they sounded like a threat. "What?" Followed was the longest summer of Tom's life. The temporary injunction meant no construction could begin, but the legal battle had only just started. Every few days brought new paperwork, each requiring Mike's attention and Tom's money. His savings, meant for retirement, dwindled with each passing week. While the courts moved at a snail's pace, the HOA moved quickly on other fronts. Flyers appeared around Oak Ridge Estates and the nearby shopping center with Tom's picture, painting him as a selfish old man blocking families from enjoying nature. "Can they do that?" Tom asked Mike one afternoon, tossing one of the flyers onto his desk. "It's not illegal, just underhanded," Mike replied grimly. "They're trying to pressure you through public opinion." The pressure increased. Tom found a nasty note in his mailbox. "Stop blocking our bridge or else." Then another. "Selfish old man." He installed a security camera after finding his mailbox smashed one morning. Meanwhile, Mike dug deeper into the HOA's records. During a court-ordered document exchange, he discovered something interesting. The construction company they hired, Mike said during a late call to Tom. "Big River Construction. Know who owns it? Linda's brother-in-law." "That can't be legal," Tom said. "It's certainly a conflict of interest she never disclosed to the HOA members," Mike replied. "And there's more. The real estate listings for new homes in Oak Ridge are advertising exclusive quick access to hiking trails as a selling point. They're charging premium prices based on a bridge that doesn't exist, and legally can't exist." Tom's kitchen calendar now had court dates circled in red. Each appearance drained more of his savings, but he refused to back down. This wasn't just about a bridge anymore. It was about right and wrong. During a particularly tense deposition, Linda Parker sat across from Tom and Mike, flanked by her expensive lawyers. The court reporter typed quietly as Mike questioned her. "Ms. Parker, when did you first become aware that your brother-in-law owned the construction company that received the bridge contract?" Linda's perfect smile faltered. "I don't recall the exact date. Were you aware before the contract was awarded?" "I might have been." Her lawyer whispered something in her ear. "Yes, I was aware. And did you disclose this relationship to the HOA board members before they voted on the contract?" Linda's face hardened. "That wasn't relevant to the decision." Tom watched as Mike methodically exposed one questionable action after another. The falsified easement, the conflict of interest, the marketing of homes based on non-existent access. By late autumn, the case was scheduled for trial. Tom stood at his kitchen window, watching leaves fall into the stream where the HOA wanted to build their bridge. The legal fight had cost him nearly $30,000, money he'd saved for years. But the land, his land, remained untouched. The phone rang. It was Mike. "You won't believe this," his friend said, excitement in his voice. "The HOA wants to settle. Their lawyer just called me." Tom gripped the phone tighter. "What kind of settlement?" "They're offering to acknowledge there's no easement, pay your legal fees, and—" Mike paused for effect. "They want to negotiate permission to build a small footbridge, with your approval, on your terms, with fair compensation." Tom sat down heavily in his kitchen chair. After months of battle, the tide had turned. But why? Would they suddenly change tactics with the trial so close? "Something doesn't add up," Tom said. "They've been fighting tooth and nail. Why give up now?" "I'm not sure," Mike admitted. "But I've got a meeting with their lawyer tomorrow morning. Want to join?" Tom looked out at his property again, at the stream that had become a battle line. "Absolutely," he said. "I want to hear what they have to say for themselves." Little did he know, the HOA's sudden desire to settle wasn't about making peace. It was about something far more concerning, something that would soon change everything. The law office of Westfield Bennett and Associates screamed money. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings. The receptionist sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Tom's truck. Even the water they offered came in fancy glass bottles, with some French name Tom couldn't pronounce. "They're trying to intimidate us," Mike whispered as they waited in the conference room. "Stay strong." The door swung open, and in walked Linda Parker with her lead attorney, a tall man with silver hair in a suit that fit him like a glove. His name was Bill Westfield, founding partner of the firm. Mr. Miller, Westfield said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. I believe we have an opportunity to resolve this matter in a way that benefits everyone. His voice was smooth, as butter, with just a hint of a southern accent. For the next hour, Westfield laid out their proposal. The HOA would publicly acknowledge Tom's property rights. They would pay him $5,000 for a limited crossing easement, just wide enough for a footbridge. Construction would begin immediately under a good faith agreement, while the final paperwork was processed. So let me get this straight, Mike said, leaning forward. You want to start building before all the legal paperwork is finalized? Westfield smiled. Time is of the essence. Winter weather is approaching and construction costs increase by nearly 20% if we delay until spring. Tom looked at the papers in front of him. After months of fighting, the HOA was finally admitting he was right, but something felt off. Why the rush? We need to discuss this privately, Mike said. In the hallway outside, Tom rubbed his forehead. What do you think? Mike frowned. They're giving up too easily. After all that fight, now they're in a rush, something doesn't add up. But they're admitting I'm right about the property. Yes, and that's a win. But I don't like this start building now, finish paperwork later business. That's like letting someone move into your house before they've signed the buying papers. Tom nodded slowly. So what do? We counter, Mike said. Hard. Back in the conference room, Mike laid out their terms. My client is willing to consider a limited easement, but we have conditions. First, the HOA will post a $50,000 bond in case of any damage to the property. Second, Mr. Miller gets to choose the contractor for environmental protection measures. Third, all binding documents must be signed and notarized before a single shovel touches dirt. Westfield's smile faded slightly. He glanced at Linda, who looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. Those terms are unreasonable, she started, but Westfield raised a hand to quiet her. We can work with this, he said smoothly. The bond is high, but shows good faith. The contractor issue is negotiable, and the paperwork priority is understandable. Tom was surprised at how quickly they agreed. After a bit more back and forth, they had a deal. Tom would allow a footbridge, a simple wooden structure for foot traffic only, in exchange for $15,000 and full acknowledgement of his property rights. 3 days later, Linda stood before the monthly HOA meeting. Tom sat in the back, hat in hand, feeling 100 pairs of eyes on him. I'd like to apologize to Mr. Miller, Linda said, her voice carrying through the community center. There was a misunderstanding about property boundaries and the HOA board acted in error. We've reached an amicable agreement that respects Mr. Miller's rights while still providing our community with trail access. The room buzzed with whispers. Tom noticed some people looking at him with newfound respect, while others, friends of Linda he guessed, glared daggers. Afterward, an older gentleman approached Tom in the parking lot. I'm Pete. Live over on Maple Court. Just wanted to say good for you for standing up to them. Linda runs this place like her personal kingdom. About time someone stood up to her. Tom was taken aback. Thanks. Thought everyone here was against me. Pete shook his head. Nah. Most folks don't even know what's going on. The board keeps everything hush-hush. Half the members don't even know about the special assessment they levied to pay for their legal fees fighting you. Special assessment? Tom asked. Yeah, an extra $500 per household. They said it was for community improvements. Didn't mention it was for lawyers. Tom drove home thinking about what Pete had said. So the HOA members were unknowingly footing the bill for Linda's fight. Maybe that explained the sudden settlement. They were running out of money they could hide from their own members. Construction began the following week. Tom insisted on being present when the workers arrived, clipboard in hand, ready to make sure they followed the agreement to the letter. The first warning sign came when he saw the equipment, much heavier machinery than needed for a simple footbridge. What's all this for? Tom asked the foreman. New design, the man said, handing Tom a rolled-up blueprint. HOA approved it yesterday. Tom unrolled the paper and his stomach dropped. This wasn't the simple wooden footbridge they'd agreed to. This was a much larger structure with concrete foundations and steel supports, strong enough to carry vehicles. "This isn't what we agreed to," Tom said. The foreman shrugged. "I just build what they tell me to build." Tom immediately called Mike, who assured him he'd look into it. Meanwhile, the workers began marking the construction area, a swath almost twice as wide as the original plan. That afternoon, Linda arrived at the site, all smiles and sweet talk. "Tom, I see you've gotten the updated plans. Isn't it wonderful? Our engineer suggested these improvements for safety and longevity." "This isn't a footbridge anymore," Tom said. "It's a road." Linda laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Don't be dramatic. It's just built to higher standards. The agreement states we can build a bridge, and that's what we're doing." The agreement specified a wooden footbridge, not this highway. "Actually," Linda said, her smile never wavering, "if you read the fine print, we're granted permission for a crossing structure. The material and exact specifications weren't legally binding." Tom felt his blood pressure rising. She'd tricked him, finding a loophole in the wording. He'd been so focused on getting them to acknowledge his property rights that he hadn't scrutinized the bridge description closely enough. As the days passed, Tom documented every deviation from their verbal agreement. The concrete was poured deeper than specified. The support beams were industrial-grade steel rather than treated lumber. The bridge width had grown from 5 feet to nearly 12, wide enough for a small truck. Whenever he complained, he got the runaround. The county inspector, who seemed awfully friendly with Linda, found no issues during his brief visits. Mike filed complaints, but the wheels of bureaucracy turned slowly. By week 3, Tom noticed the construction crew working at a frantic pace, often late into the evening. They skipped inspections that were clearly listed in the permit requirements. Materials arrived with no quality checks. One evening, Tom overheard the foreman on the phone. "Yeah, we'll have it done by Tuesday. The old man's raising hell, but what's he gonna do? By the time any inspector gets out here, it'll be finished." Tuesday. That was just 4 days away. Something big was happening on Tuesday, and Tom was determined to find out what. Monday night, Tom tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Rain pattered against his bedroom window, a steady drumbeat matching his worries. What was happening tomorrow? Why the rush to finish the bridge? He reached for his phone. 3:17 a.m. With a sigh, he got up and made coffee, then spread his papers across the kitchen table. Something in the settlement agreement might give him a clue. As dawn broke, Tom's eyes caught on a single line he'd overlooked before. Final inspection and certification must be completed by November 15th. That was Tuesday, today. But why that specific date? His phone rang, startling him. It was Mike. "Turn on your computer," Mike said without preamble. "Check your email. Now." Tom fumbled with his ancient laptop, waiting impatiently for it to boot up. "What's going on?" "A friend at the county clerk's office just sent me something. The HOA filed permit amendments yesterday afternoon. They're planning a ceremonial opening of the bridge today at 2 p.m. Opening? It's not even finished." That's not all. They've invited the local newspaper and TV station. Linda's calling it a community celebration. And get this, they're planning to drive maintenance vehicles across it as part of a structural demonstration. Tom's blood ran cold. That bridge isn't ready for vehicles. The concrete hasn't properly set in this cold weather. The side railings aren't secured. "I know. I've already filed an emergency motion with the judge, but I can't get a hearing until tomorrow morning." Tom looked at the clock. 7:35 a.m. "That's too late. The celebration is at 2 p.m. Try to stall them," Mike said. "I'll keep working the legal angle. Maybe the rain will delay them." As if on cue, the rain stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds. Tom threw on clothes and ran outside to his truck. The old engine sputtered, then roared to life. As he drove toward the bridge site, his mind raced through options. He could block the road with his truck, call the sheriff, string up warning signs. When he arrived, his heart sank. A small army of workers swarmed over the bridge, rushing to attach the final railings and sweep debris from the deck. A banner hung from nearby trees. "Grand opening today. Oak Ridge Estates Community Bridge. Tom spotted the foreman and marched over to him. This bridge isn't ready. The concrete foundation needs at least 7 more days to cure properly. The man avoided Tom's eyes. Just following orders, sir. This is dangerous. You know it's dangerous. The foreman looked around nervously, then lowered his voice. Look, between you and me, I've been saying the same thing. But Ms. Parker is insisting we finish today. Something about property tax assessments changing tomorrow. I don't know the details. I just know we all get bonuses if this opens today. Property taxes. Tom pulled out his phone and called Pete, the friendly HOA member he'd met. Tax reassessment, Pete confirmed after Tom explained. County's doing a special assessment on undeveloped land tomorrow. If the bridge is officially in use today, the HOA gets the land classified as improved recreational property instead of undeveloped wetland. Saves them about $30,000 a year in taxes. The pieces clicked into place. Linda had been rushing for a deadline all along, a financial deadline. The safety of the bridge was secondary to saving money. Tom took photos of the rushed construction work and recorded a video pointing out the safety issues. Then he called the county inspector's office and left an urgent message about the unsafe conditions. He emailed the local newspaper, explaining that the bridge wasn't being opened for the benefit of residents. It was a tax dodge. At 1:30 p.m., cars began arriving. Oak Ridge Estates residents in their Sunday best, carrying picnic baskets and children's hands. Local officials with their practiced smiles. A van from the local TV station. Linda stood at the entrance to the bridge in a red dress and pearls, greeting people like a queen at court. When she spotted Tom, her smile flickered but didn't falter. Mr. Miller, how wonderful that you could join our celebration. See how your generosity has united our community? This bridge isn't safe, Tom said quietly. You know it isn't ready. Linda's smile turned brittle. Nonsense. Our engineers have approved it. Call this off, Linda. Someone could get hurt. Always the doom and gloom, she said with a little laugh. This is a perfectly safe structure. In fact, we're about to demonstrate just how sturdy it is. She turned away, clapping her hands to get everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grand opening of the Oak Ridge Estates Community Bridge. Today marks the beginning of a new era of accessibility for our neighborhood. The crowd applauded. Tom looked around desperately. Where was the county inspector? Had anyone listened to his warnings? Linda continued. To demonstrate the remarkable engineering of our bridge, the board members and I will drive across in our maintenance vehicle, carrying equipment that will be used for trail maintenance on the other side. A golf cart decked out with the Oak Ridge Estates logo and loaded with shovels and rakes pulled up. 4 board members, including Linda, climbed in, smiling and waving like celebrities. Tom pushed through the crowd. Stop. This isn't safe. The concrete hasn't cured and the support beams aren't properly secured. A security guard stepped in front of him. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step back. Tom fumbled for his phone. If no one would listen, he'd at least document this madness. He hit record just as the golf cart began its journey onto the bridge. The crowd cheered. The cart moved slowly, Linda at the wheel, beaming for the cameras. Halfway across, she stopped for a photo opportunity, the board members posing with the scenic stream as their backdrop. That's when Tom heard it, a low groan from the bridge's structure, a sound no properly built bridge should ever make. Get off. The bridge, he shouted. Now! Linda glared at him, her smile gone. Mr. Miller, you've opposed this project from the beginning. These theatrics won't. A sharp crack cut her off. The bridge shuddered. Time seemed to slow down. The crowd gasped as the middle section of the bridge sagged visibly. Linda's face transformed from annoyance to horror as she finally realized the danger. She hit the accelerator, trying to reach the other side, but it was too late. With a sound like thunder, the bridge's center collapsed. The golf cart tipped sideways, sending Linda and the board members tumbling 6 feet down into the stream below. Metal groaned and splintered wood flew as the bridge folded in on itself. Screams erupted from the crowd. Parents grabbed their children and backed away. The cameraman from the TV station captured everything. Tom dropped his phone and ran toward the collapsed bridge. He scrambled down the muddy bank to the stream, where Linda and the others thrashed in the knee-deep water. "Don't move," he shouted. "You could be hurt." Linda sat in the stream, her red dress soaked, her perfect hair plastered to her head. "My ankle," she moaned. "I think it's broken." Another board member, an older man named Bob, clutched his chest, his face pale. The other two seemed shaken but unhurt. As Tom helped Linda to a sitting position on the bank, he heard one construction worker mutter to another, "I told you those foundation anchors weren't set right." "Boss said to hurry," the other replied. Said time was more important than double-checking. Tom's phone, still recording on the bank above, captured every word. By the time ambulances arrived, the crowd had heard the workers' conversation. Whispers spread like wildfire. The county inspector finally showed up, his face grim as he surveyed the damage. The reporter from the local paper scribbled notes furiously. Tom sat on the muddy bank, exhausted. The bridge that was supposed to bring the community together had literally fallen apart, just as he'd warned. As medics loaded Linda into an ambulance, she wouldn't meet his eyes. Pete appeared beside Tom, offering a hand up. "You tried to warn them," he said quietly. Nobody listened. "Oh, they're listening now," Pete replied, pointing to the TV camera focused on the collapsed bridge. "The whole town's listening now." The day after the bridge collapsed, Tom's peaceful farmhouse became the center of a storm. His phone rang constantly. Reporters crowded his driveway. His email inbox flooded with messages from Oak Ridge Estates residents, some apologetic, others still blaming him somehow. "You should shut your phone off," Mike advised when he arrived that morning, carrying a box of donuts and a thick folder of papers. "The media circus will die down in a few days." Tom shook his head, pouring coffee for them both. "I'm not hiding, I did nothing wrong." "That's an understatement." Mike opened his laptop, showing Tom the morning's newspaper website. The headline blared, "Bridge Collapse Reveals HOA Corruption." Below was a picture of Linda being helped from the stream, mascara running down her face, looking nothing like the polished HOA president she portrayed herself as. "Your phone recording is everywhere," Mike said. "Those workers admitting they rushed the job on Linda's orders. Gold." By noon, the county inspector's office had launched a formal investigation. 2 officials in suits walked the collapse site, taking photos and measurements, shaking their heads at the shoddy workmanship now exposed for all to see. "The concrete wasn't even dry," one inspector told a reporter, loud enough for nearby residents to hear. "I've been doing this job for 20 years, and I've never seen such blatant disregard for basic safety standards." That afternoon, Tom received another visitor, Bill Jenkins, the county environmental protection officer. "This is a designated wetland habitat," Jenkins explained, standing at the edge of the stream. The permit they obtained required specific protections for the water, quality, and wildlife. "Based on what I'm seeing, none of those protections were implemented. What happens now?" Tom asked. Jenkins sighed, writing something on his clipboard. "Fines, big ones, and they'll be required to restore the habitat to its original condition, which means removing all this debris and concrete, then replanting native species." By the end of the week, the scandal had grown beyond the bridge collapse. The county prosecutor's office announced an investigation into the HOA's financial practices after several homeowners filed complaints. Pete called Tom with updates from inside the community. "It's chaos over here," he said. "Turns out Linda's been using HOA funds like her personal piggy bank. The playground renovations we were promised last year? That money went to fighting you in court? The fancy new security system? Never installed, but we paid for it." "How did she get away with it for so long?" Tom asked. Nobody looked closely at the books. She kept getting re-elected because nobody else wanted the job. Plus, her brother-in-law and 2 cousins were on the board with her. The HOA held an emergency meeting in the community center. Though he wasn't a member, Tom slipped in and sat quietly in the back row, hat on his knee. The room buzzed with angry voices. A tall man in glasses stood at the microphone. "My name is Dan Wilson, and I'm an accountant. I volunteered to review our financial records after recent events. What I found is disturbing. He clicked through slides showing years of financial mismanagement. Money allocated for one project mysteriously shifted to another. Contracts awarded without competitive bidding. Thousands spent on administrative expenses with no receipts. The bridge project alone has cost this community over $120,000 so far, Dan concluded. That's triple the approved budget. And now we're facing fines and restoration costs that could reach $200,000 more. The room erupted. A woman stood up, pointing an accusing finger at Linda, who sat pale-faced at the front table, her ankle in a cast. You told us this bridge would cost $40,000 and be covered by our regular dues. Now we're each facing a $2,000 special assessment to cover your mistakes. Linda tried to defend herself, but her usual confidence had evaporated. We were trying to improve property values, she stammered. The bridge would have benefited everyone. Not if it collapsed with our kids on it, someone shouted from the back. By month's end, Linda and the entire board had resigned. The construction company, owned by her brother-in-law, had its license suspended pending investigation. The HOA's insurance company refused to cover the damages, citing willful negligence in their denial letter. Meanwhile, several homeowners filed a class action lawsuit against the former board members personally, arguing they had breached their fiduciary duty to the community. Tom watched it all unfold from a distance. He felt no joy in their troubles, just relief that truth had prevailed. His property remained his, the stream was being cleaned up, and the community had awakened to the importance of oversight. One crisp autumn morning, as Tom walked his property line, he noticed something unusual near the damaged bridge site, a small group of people with shovels and wheelbarrows. As he approached, he recognized Pete and several other Oak Ridge residents. "Morning, Tom," Pete called. "Hope you don't mind. We're volunteers from the neighborhood helping clean up this mess." Tom was touched. "Don't mind at all." A woman stepped forward, extending her hand. "I'm Nancy, the new HOA president. We wanted to apologize in person for everything that happened." "No need," Tom said. "You weren't responsible." "Maybe not directly," she said. "But we all looked the other way while Linda ran things. That makes us partly responsible." She handed Tom an envelope. "This is a formal letter acknowledging that this land belongs to you, with no easements or claims from our association. We're also covering all costs to restore the stream to its natural state." Tom nodded his thanks, oddly moved by the gesture. Over the next few months, he got to know his neighbors better. They weren't the enemies he'd imagined during the conflict. Most were just regular folks who'd been misled by someone they trusted. That winter, Tom had an idea. On the far corner of his property, where it naturally connected to the public hiking trails, he marked out a small path. When spring came, he hired a local contractor, an honest one recommended by Pete, to build a simple wooden footbridge across a narrow section of the stream. No concrete foundations, no vehicle access, just a humble footpath with a small sign, Miller Crossing. Tom didn't ask for money or recognition. He just invited the community for a small, informal opening. No cameras, no speeches, just neighbors, meeting neighbors. The first family to cross his bridge was a young couple with twin boys about 5 years old. The children ran across laughing while their parents thanked Tom for his generosity. "We moved here for the trails," the father explained. "When all that business with the HOA happened, we thought we'd made a mistake buying here. This means a lot." As spring turned to summer, Tom often saw Oak Ridge residents walking his path, waving to him as he worked in his garden. Sometimes they stopped to chat, or brought him homemade cookies or jam. The simple bridge had become something neither side had expected, a true connection between neighbors. The stream area where the illegal bridge had collapsed was transformed into a small wetland conservation area, with native plants that attracted birds and butterflies. The county even installed educational signs about the local ecosystem. As for Linda Parker, she sold her house and moved away, leaving behind a community wiser about the importance of transparency, proper oversight, and respecting boundaries, both the physical property lines and the limits of power. One evening, as Tom sat on his porch watching fireflies rise from the meadow, He reflected on the strange journey. What had begun as a battle over land had transformed into something unexpected, a lesson about standing up for what's right, the dangers of unchecked authority, and ultimately, the healing power of genuine community. The bridge that collapsed was never what the neighborhood truly needed. What they needed, what everyone needed, was simple respect and honest communication, the kind that couldn't be built with concrete and steel, but with trust and goodwill. And that, Tom thought, as he watched a family cross his footbridge in the golden evening light, was a foundation that would never collapse.